Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to go over the Salesforce Admin Exam Guide as of March 2022. When starting a career in Salesforce, the first exam that most Salesforce newcomers will start on is the Salesforce Admin Exam. Salesforce recommends you have experience prior to taking this exam, but don't be concerned if you don't have any experience. You will gain more than enough hands-on experience while studying for this exam if you complete the trailhead modules and apply what you learned to a playground org. So let's scroll down to the About the Exam section of this guide. So there are 60 multiple choice slash multiple select questions. There will be 5 non-scored questions, which will result in 65 total questions on exam day. You'll get 105 minutes to complete the exam, which is an hour and 45 minutes. That gives you approximately a minute and 45 seconds to complete each question. The passing score is 65%, which means you would need to get 39 out of the 60 questions correct. Again, the score would be out of 60 questions, not 65, because 5 aren't scored. The registration fee is $200 plus applicable taxes. I wanted to point out, if you attend one of Salesforce free certification days, which are days that Salesforce offers to go over the various exam topics, you'll receive a discount code at the end of the presentation that will discount your registration by $40 on any $200 exam. If you need to retake the exam, it's $100 plus applicable taxes. There's 2 ways that you can take the exam. One way is you can take it on site at a testing center, and the other way is online proctored at your house or anywhere that you have a computer. Both are proctored exams. I personally prefer testing center because you don't have to worry about being in the right environment. If you take the exam at home, there are many rules on what can be in the room with you, such as a TV screen or computer monitors. So taking the exam at a testing center takes that stress off of you, knowing the testing environment is already good to go. But with the uncertainty of COVID restrictions, I can see why you would want to take it at home as well. You can't bring any of your own material to the exam on exam day, although that should be expected. It's not an open note exam. And lastly, there are no prerequisites to this exam. That's why this is typically the first exam that most Salesforce newcomers take. So if we scroll down to recommended training and references, all of these will help you learn Salesforce. But if your goal is to fast track your learning to pass the exam, I wouldn't recommend doing all the modules in this trail mix. Strategically complete the learning modules for the exam topics that are most heavily weighted or the topics in which you score lowly on the practice test. Outside of Trailhead, I'd recommend purchasing the Focus on Force practice test and the study guide, which I'll leave in the video description below. The Focus on Force practice tests are great because you have the option to receive feedback on what the right answer is and the explanation behind it. I also recommend watching YouTube videos such as the Salesforce Basics playlist videos that I put out, and really any other videos that you can find online. There are courses out there, but I wouldn't recommend paying for one unless you absolutely need to. Some people prefer having that structured course, but if you just take this exam guide and you paste it in a Word doc or a Google doc, you can search most of the exam topics on Google or YouTube and find an abundance of information on each topic. So onto the exam outline. There is a total of 7 exam sections covered on this exam. The 3 largest sections, configuration and setup, object manager and lightning app builder, and workflow process and automation, make up 56% of the exam. So those 3 are extremely important to learn and study. To start with configuration and setup, this section covers what I consider to be the day-to-day responsibilities of an admin: setting up users, assigning profiles and permission sets, things such as company settings, business hours, currency management, creating public groups. You also need to learn security settings for things such as org-wide defaults, sharing rules, roles and role hierarchy, understanding how reports and dashboards are shared, and lastly, just understanding the user interface of the platform itself. For example, knowing what the app launcher is and where to locate it, what a list view is, where to access the setup menu, and just navigating around the platform. Again, this is 20%, so I highly recommend getting a good understanding of each of these topics. So on to the Object Manager and Lightning App Builder section. For this section, you'll need to understand the difference between standard and custom objects. You'll also need to understand the purpose of Object Manager, Schema Builder, Lightning App Builder, and how to navigate to each of them. understanding the various relationships between objects, such as master detail relationships, also known as parent-child, lookup relationships, and junction relationships. You also need to know the purpose of record types and how to set them up, how to create, delete, and customize fields and page layouts, as well as the implication on deleting fields. And lastly, how record types, page layouts, and business processes are integrated together for both standard and custom objects. Like the last section, with this section being weighted 20%, you should really get a good understanding of each of these topics. Focusing on the top three sections of the exam and really scoring high on those three sections gives you a great chance to pass first time around. So we'll move on to the sales and marketing application section. For this section, you'll need to know the capabilities and implications of the sales process. Essentially, the flow from a lead to an opportunity and the various functionalities that are a part of that flow. You'll also need to understand sales productivity tools, which ones to use, such as dashboards for tracking metrics, lead scoring, and opportunity scoring for a better and more calculated predictability of conversion. Lastly, learning about lead automation tools and campaign management tools. Most people start learning Salesforce on the Sales Cloud, so a lot of the fundamentals that you learn are going to be in the Sales Cloud. Understanding the various objects that go along with the sales process, such as campaigns, leads, opportunities, accounts, gaining that fundamental understanding of each of those objects will help you understand the overall sales process in general. On to the service and support application section. Now, I know at this point we're only 3 topics in, and you may feel lost if all or most of this is unfamiliar to you. Don't worry, almost all Salesforce professionals felt this way when they first started out. Once you start learning, all this will start to make much more sense. So we're going to move on to the service and support section. So this section is essentially all about case management and how to automate case management. What a case is, how to assign a case, the queues you can set up for assigning cases, along with support processes, auto response rules, and case escalation rules. This section is essentially about learning the case object and the various things that go along with it. If we move on to the productivity and collaboration section, this section covers activity management, such as creating tasks or logging a call on a record. Understanding what chatter is in Salesforce is important for this section as well. You'll also need to understand the capabilities of the Salesforce mobile app. And lastly, the use cases for App Exchange. I actually recently created a video on App Exchange on my Salesforce Basics playlist. From my experience, it's extremely important to know when to use App Exchange packages instead of building custom functionality in Salesforce. So when taking practice tests, keep that in mind. If we move on to the data and analytics management section, in this section, knowing the difference between Data Import Wizard and Data Loader is extremely important. These are the 2 ways to load data into Salesforce out of the box. Knowing when to use one instead of the other is definitely something you'll need to understand. You also want to understand how to create a report type or customize an existing report type. Additionally, learning the impact of the sharing model on reports. And lastly, knowing how to create and modify dashboards. For dashboards, you'll want to understand dashboard components and how each component needs an underlying report. Without a report, there would be no data to visualize on a dashboard. There are also various chart types you'll need to know, along with understanding when to use certain chart types over another to convey the purpose of the report data correctly to the end users who will be viewing the dashboard. Although this isn't in the top 3 of the heavily weighted sections, it's still 14% of the exam. So I highly recommend going over each of these topics until you fully understand them. And now we'll move on to the last section, which is workflow and process automation. There are 4 types of automations currently available in Salesforce: workflow rules, approval processes, process builder, and flow. You will need to understand the capabilities of each of these automation tools, as well as when to use one over another. Salesforce recently announced that they plan on retiring both workflow rules and process builder in the near future, but for now, it's still required for you to learn both of these when preparing for this exam. So if you understand those 4 automation tools, you'll be good for this section. So those are all the sections. We've covered just about everything. I'm sure there's a couple things that I didn't highlight, but overall, if you study everything that we went over in this video, you should be good to go for the exam. I'm not going to read the exam candidate code of conduct, but as a Salesforce professional, it's extremely important to read and understand this. The integrity of these certifications is extremely important, not only to Salesforce, but to everyone in the Salesforce ecosystem. After reading this code of conduct, if you scroll down, there's also a section on maintaining your Salesforce certifications. As it says right here, don't let your hard-earned credential expire. Always keep up with the maintenance of each of your certifications so you don't have to take the test again. So that's all I have for this video. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.